Hey everyone, it's Allie, and what I want to do today was go over all the Forge Night changes that have happened, as well as just showcase to you why Forge Guard suddenly is going to become a very meta class very quickly. Expect a lot of build guides out of a lot of people for Forge Guard, as we are going to see probably the single biggest glow up in last Epoch's history. Forge Guard has typically been a meme class, mostly considered as completely dead weights, where it just was not strong enough nor capable enough of really putting together a strong build while at the same time having good defenses. Well, with the 1.1 patch, they are reworking Forge Guard into an absolute monster, easily becoming the tankiest class in the game, while at the same time being able to leverage that tankiness into being able to scale its damage. Because of all this, I think Forge Guard is going to be unbelievably strong. It's going to be exciting to try it out for myself as I get further into the season. I think the first thing that we should go over is going to be what is actually going to make Forge Guard just so tanky. First off, its mastery is being changed to where you are now gaining 3 times as much armor every single time you get hit, effectively making it so you are gaining the armor of being hit 33 times in 10 seconds previously for only getting hit 10 times. Getting hit once per second seems fairly reasonable to do, so we can assume that this mastery should be at maximum efficiency at all times while doing monoliths and at a pretty high efficiency while doing bosses. Because of this, Forge Guard is going to have access to quite a lot of armor in an arsenal, which is going to be great because armor is one of the best ways to take less damage. We can then also pair this with the new Iron Attunement, which with 5 passive points is going to convert a portion of your armor into damage taken over time mitigation per 2 attunement that you have. This is going to be really too difficult to stack, as Iron Attunement itself is going to give you 8 attunement. And then if we go over to the Paladin tree, we can also pick up Defiance for another 8 attunement plus a 24% elemental resistance bonus. With this together, you should already have a pretty decent amount of additional less dot damage taken, which can then be paired up with Liquid Iron, which just gives you 15% less damage taken over time, which is doubled if you use a health potion recently. This is a large amount of additional defenses for Forge Guard on its own, as dot damage is by far the scariest thing in high corruption pushing. The fact that Forge Guard has a way to scale it is, in my opinion, completely insane. And when we pair it up with the fact that Forge Guard has some insane bases, such as the Champion Regalia, giving you 700 armor and up to 17 armor mitigation applies to damage over time, it is going to be a very, very tanky class. A big problem of Sentinel was that Armor Clad was literally the only little bit of less damage taken that Sentinel got, period. Forge Guard is now going to have a new node on top of that, Wall of Solarium, which gives you up to 10% less damage taken if you have 50% block chance. This means that Forge Guard will now have a passive 20% less damage taken because we will be getting to that 50% block chance threshold. Forge Guard is basically the block mastery in the game, giving it block chance from pretty much everything, allowing you to get to that 50% threshold and more fairly easily. There's going to be a new weapon added into a game that's basically a shield that you can equip in your main hand, as well as you being able to get upwards of 30 to 40% block chance on your shield alone, and various other nodes they have access to, such as Shield Bash's block node or Ring of Shield's block node, can easily push you upwards into 70-80% block chance fairly easily. And then suddenly, the early game defenses of a Forge Guard are substantially better than they were before. I really like Maya Protection, as this honestly kind of does everything you need in a Forge Guard. Not only does it give you 40% increased block effectiveness, making all of your block effectiveness overall better, but it's going to give you up to 85 health on block, which is actually going to be a very solid defensive layer, given that we're going to be looking to hit over 100% block. What we can do in the mid game is go and farm ourselves a Bastion of Honor, which is not that difficult to get, and we could most likely get LP on it fairly easily in the end game if we want to, which is going to allow us to get a very large amount of block chance per strength that we have against enemies within 4 meters. Because stacking strength on a Forge Guard is going to be very easy to do, we can very easily get our block chance to over 100%, meaning that our block effectiveness effectively just becomes permanent damage mitigation. With all the armor that you can stack in this build, you can easily get yourself upwards to 10 to 15,000 armor plus, as well as 8,000 plus block mitigation, giving you 80% less damage taken mitigators at the same time, on top of the 20% less damage that you'll have just for having your passive point, and on top of all the dot damage action that you're going to have in this build. You can then also go and pair this up with some red rings in the end game, giving you another 20% less damage taken, allowing you to get your max hits on a Sentinel in the end game to some very silly numbers. Because of this, suddenly Forge Guard has gone from being really squishy and having no way of living to suddenly really broken, effectively being the tankiest build in the game, barring the Ghost Flame channeling setups on Warlock. But because this build straight up will just have this much mitigation by just standing still and doing literally nothing, it is going to, in my opinion, be a lot better. If you are going to want to play something super tanky, a Forge Guard is basically going to be exactly that. Now, you might be asking yourself, Allie, how do we actually turn this tankiness into damage? Aren't we pretty heavily investing into block chance and armor here? Where's the damage actually coming from? Well, in an endgame Forge Guard build, it's fairly simple for you to hit 70, 80, 90 strength at a minimum. And because of all this block effectiveness and all this block chance, there's one clear winner of a skill that is guaranteed to be very, very broken. And that is going to be Shield Bash. Shield Bash is going to have Indomitable Force, which is going to give you 2 flat damage per 40 block effectiveness that you have, which is a very large amount of damage. Given that at around 8,000 block effectiveness, this is going to equal out to about 800 flat damage. Any skill with 800 flat damage is bound to do a large amount of damage, and there's just simply no way that that's not very good. We can also combine a Shield Storm, and given that we are over 100% block chance, is going to give us 50% increased attack speed, making the skill feel really snappy. And then finally, we have Iron Arms, which with our 70, 80 strength is just effectively 70 to 80 more physical damage. With all this together, Shield Bash is having some pretty good scalers onto its damage, which should hopefully mean that it's going to be an endgame monster, deleting monoliths fairly easily. And even if its boss damage is not necessarily the highest, well, you're basically playing the tankiest build in the game, so it's okay if bosses are a little bit slower, given that you physically do not have any chance of dying. Finally, what we could do is take all this and pair it up with Ring of Shields, as the new Shield Crafter has actually been reworked into a useful node. Previously, Shield Crafter gave you a 5% chance when he got hit to cast the Ring of Shields, but it is now a 50% chance on block, meaning that we should very easily always have the 3 maximum triggers from this every 6 seconds that it has to offer us. Because this gives us another 100 block effectiveness per shield, this should also stack with the actual Ring of Shields that we'll be casting ourselves. We will be able to cast 5 of them with reinforcement, and given that we're going to get another 15% block chance and 150 block effectiveness every single time we cast Ring of Shields, which should work with the passive point, and the fact that we can get Phalanx for another 50% increased armor when we get healed by our Ring of Shields, which will like constantly be spamming, and another 50% block effectiveness from sturdy shields, we should be doing so much damage, and we should basically be block effectiveness capped, that this build basically will have no chance of not doing a lot of damage. I don't exactly know how this build would look in the early game and how playable it would be, as Bastion of Honor is going to be something that is going to massively blow up the strength of this build, but I really don't think it's going to be too weak, given that Moment of Protection is a common item, and with the amount of strength in just this item alone, you should most likely be fine to either just be playing Shield Bash with just a bunch of block effectiveness stacking by default, or potentially just playing something like Warpath or Javelin until you get yourself the shield and then fully swap over to the build. Now, one thing I do want to mention here at the end is that yes, this is specifically looking into Shield Bash, and yes, this is not really representative of the whole Forge Guard in general, as if we were to think about, for example, Forged Weapons or any of the other Forge Guard skills, they would be a lot harder to scale up, given that this build gets to also benefit from its defenses as a way to increase its damage, while the other builds would have you sacrifice some of the other stats for more damage. So given that, other builds might not necessarily be just as strong, but at least Forge Guard is guaranteed to have one very, very strong build going into patch 1.1, which is way better than the previous 0 good builds that this whole class had. I am very excited to try this out, and this most likely is going to be the second build I'll be trying out in the second season, and I'm excited to just see how overpowered we can make this. I hope you kitties enjoyed this little preview at looking into the new Forge Guard and just why it's going to be so powerful. And if you are on the edge of potentially playing Forge Guard yourself, and if you weren't sure if you want to try it out, I would highly recommend to give Shield Bash a go, and hopefully I swayed your opinion a little bit on potentially trying it out as a powerful build. If you have any questions on anything we discussed here, feel free to leave a comment in the comments below. I also stream on Twitch every single day, so feel free to come by Twitch and ask me any questions you have there. Or if you simply just want to come by and be a part of our community, I'd be more than happy to see you there as well. With all that said, I hope you kitties enjoyed this video, and I'll see you all in the next one.